Humanity is making a mistake, and the last species that made this mistake has already vanished completely from the Earth. 33 million years ago, there was a creature called Desmostylus. It had 4 legs, weighed 10 tons, its mouth worked like a stapler that could pin seagrass in place, and its throat was like a vacuum cleaner that could suck everything clean in one gulp. It dominated the Pacific Ocean for 20 million years. It was the only marine mammal to become completely extinct. Whales are still here, seals are still here, manatees are still here, only it is completely gone. What killed it was not a meteorite, not a volcano, but the way it ate. It had a habit when feeding. It pulled things out by the roots. One bite, one suction, leaving nothing behind. But manatees only eat the leaves, leaving the roots in the soil. 20 million years later, one species ate itself into extinction, the other ate itself into becoming the ruler. Now think about it. Which one does humanity resemble in its attitude toward Earth's resources? But this story is far stranger than you imagine, because the extinction of Desmostylus was not an accident, but a tragedy that had long been destined. It spent 20 million years personally writing its own epitaph. First, let us clear up one thing. What exactly was Desmostylus? It looked like a hippopotamus. The first scientists who discovered its fossils all thought they had dug up the ancestor of a prehistoric hippo, but then DNA analysis left them dumbfounded. It had nothing to do with hippos at all. Instead, it was related to elephants and manatees. Yes, you heard that right. This creature that looked like a hippo was actually evolutionarily closer to the elephants you see in a zoo. Sometimes evolution can produce twists more outrageous than any screenwriter. What was even stranger was its body structure. Its 4 legs were thick and powerful, looking fully capable of supporting it on land. But after studying its skeleton, paleontologists discovered that those 4 legs actually could not support its body at all. Its bone structure, like that of manatees, was spongy. What does that mean? It had legs, but it never came ashore. Imagine a gigantic beast weighing 10 tons with 4 legs, yet forever soaked in water, like a fat man trapped in a swimming pool, never able to climb out. The image is both ridiculous and tragic. So how did it move? Scientists speculate that it may have swum like a polar bear, using its strong forelimbs to paddle forward. But speed? Do not count on it. It had no tail, or rather, a pitifully short one. That means its pace of life was very slow. It did not need to flee for its life, nor did it need to chase prey. After all, it was a herbivore, a 10-ton herbivore. It sounds harmless enough, but the way it ate plants could be called the most violent form of grazing in the biological world. And when it comes to eating, this is exactly what made Desmostylus so extreme. Its teeth were a design found nowhere else on Earth. Have you ever seen those old-fashioned staplers? They clamp the paper and then with a click pin it in place. That is how Desmostylus's mouth worked. Its upper and lower jaws were like 2 rows of pillars. When it bit down, it did not grind food up. It clamped the seagrass in place. That is also where its name comes from. Desmostylus means something like a bundle of pillars, describing those bizarre teeth of its. But clamping was only the first step. What came next was the real nightmare. Inside its throat was a set of super powerful muscles. How powerful? Powerful enough to create vacuum suction? Once it clamped the seagrass, its throat muscles contracted, and with a whoosh, the entire plant, roots and leaves, was sucked straight into its stomach, cleanly, as if it had been vacuumed away. In 2015, the paleontologist Louis Jacobs of Southern Methodist University in the United States studied fossils found in the Aleutian Islands and exclaimed, "There is no mammal on Earth that feeds this way." You need to understand the weight of that statement. Among the tens of thousands of mammal species that have appeared on Earth, not a single one fed in this manner. Only Desmostylus. It was uniquely one of a kind, but that uniqueness was precisely what sealed its fate. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Efficient, fast, one bite at a time, clean and decisive. But here is the problem. If you pull seagrass out by the roots, can it grow back? The answer is no. That was the fatal flaw of Desmostylus. It ate too thoroughly, so thoroughly that not a blade of grass was left alive. After it finished eating one patch of seafloor, that patch was ruined. Then it had to swim to the next patch and keep eating and keep destroying. In the short term, it was efficient. In the long term, it was suicide. Its rival, the manatee, chose the exact opposite strategy. Manatees also eat seagrass, but they evolved a sustainable way of feeding. They use only their lips to tear off the leaves, leaving the roots in the seabed. After a few months, new leaves grow back. The manatee comes back around and sees, hey, the buffet has been refilled. 2 ways of eating, 2 destinies. One is short-sighted and exhausts everything. The other is steady, restrained, and sustainable. 20 million years was enough time for those 2 strategies to determine a winner. Desmostylus and manatees entered the oceans at almost the same time. Manatees appeared about 55 million years ago, but they did not fully adapt to marine life until the end of the Eocene. Desmostylus appeared 33 million years ago, so the two of them entered full-time marine life at roughly the same time, and thus a competition lasting 20 million years began. At first, Desmostylus had every advantage. They were bigger. Some species weighed as much as 10 tons, comparable to Steller's sea cow, the largest Sirenian known in recent times. They were more widely distributed, from Japan to Russia, from the Aleutian Islands to Baja California in Mexico. The entire North Pacific was their territory. They even evolved into two branches. One branch specialized in diving, living mainly in shallow coastal seas within 30 meters of depth, and occasionally even swimming into freshwater estuaries. The other branch lived in deeper waters, bolder still, venturing into the open ocean and deep sea. It seemed that the future of Desmostylus was bright. They had conquered the entire North Pacific. It seemed that nothing could stop them, but the peak of glory is often the beginning of decline. A new Japanese study in 2025 revealed the truth behind the extinction of Desmostylus. After analyzing dozens of fossil samples, scientists found that the two major lineages of Desmostylus each reached peaks of diversity during different climate events. The shallow water lineage performed best during a period of global warming, while the deep water lineage did better during another climatic transition. But when global cooling arrived in the middle to late Miocene, both lineages collapsed at the same time. Why? Because the seagrass was no longer thriving. Global cooling caused sea levels to fall, coastlines retreated, what had once been fertile shallow seas turned into dry land. The living space for seagrass shrank, and the feeding method of Desmostylus was to pull everything out by the roots, which was the same as violently flipping over the table while the table itself was already shrinking. They ate themselves into a dead end. That is what you call a death spiral. The fewer the resources, the harder they fed. The harder they fed, the fewer the resources became, until one day everything was gone. And what about the manatees? They quietly survived. Not only did they survive, they used the opportunity to expand northward, taking over the territory that had once belonged to Desmostylus. By the time the last Desmostylus disappeared in the late Miocene, manatees had already become the only rulers of the seagrass world. You might ask, couldn't Desmostylus just change its feeding method? Evolution gave it no such chance. By the late stage of its history, Desmostylus actually became even more specialized. The last forms had lower jaws more complex than those of their ancestors, with stronger suction and a tighter grip. It was like a gambler who had already lost until his eyes were red, yet still kept doubling down. Evolution can be that cruel sometimes. It lets you go farther and farther down the wrong road until there is no way back. Specialization itself is not the problem, but if you become so specialized that you only know one way to live, and that way of living is suicidal, then there is truly no saving you. Now let us pull the timeline back to the modern age. Desmostylus has been extinct for 10 million years, and 10 million years later, today, another species has appeared on Earth whose way of consuming things is astonishingly similar to that of Desmostylus. Not seagrass, but oil, coal, forests, minerals, pulling everything out by the roots, taking one big gulp, leaving nothing behind. In just 250 years of industrial civilization, humanity has consumed more than half of the resources that Earth accumulated over hundreds of millions of years. Do you think humanity's ending will be better than that of Desmostylus? Some people say humans have technology, but Desmostylus had its own technology too. That unique vacuum feeding system, so efficient that no mammal could rival it. Efficiency did not save it. Some people say humans will change, but Desmostylus changed too. It became more and more specialized, more and more efficient, and then moved faster and faster toward extinction. If the direction of change is wrong, then change itself only accelerates death. A paleontologist at the Smithsonian once said while studying the extinction of Desmostylus, Desmostylus is the only marine mammal to have become completely extinct. Their disappearance reminds us that even a species successful for 20 million years can still destroy itself because of its own survival strategy. 33 million years ago, Desmostylus first stretched its mouth towards seagrass. 10 million years ago, the last one closed its eyes. During those 23 million years in between, they dominated the Pacific Ocean and were the strangest beings in the sea of their age. But today, apart from a few fossils in museums, no one remembers them, and the manatee, quietly eating grass, biting only the leaves and never touching the roots, is still drifting leisurely through the warm, shallow seas. You see, it was not the fastest that won. It was not the one that ate the most that won. It was the one that ate the smartest that survived to the end. So the next time you see that goofy, harmless looking face of a manatee, remember this. It may be one of the most successful endurance champions on Earth, and buried in the seafloor beneath its feet lies a lesson 20 million years long.